The House will come to order. Further discussion to House File 3. I recognize the member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's good to have a full House this evening as we come back. And members, and Representative Greenman, I always take a great amount of pleasure in quoting someone to themselves. So earlier on the Altendorf Amendment, the A26, you said, members, this is unconstitutional, vote no. And I would have the same thing to say about the bill. And I remember when I was on the Elections Committee my very first year here, then Representative Tim Sanders was the chair, and then Representative Ryan Winkler had the repeal of Citizens United in his bill. And as a fairly aggressive freshman, and I know you find that hard to believe that I would be aggressive, I decided to question the representative, and he admitted that it would likely be ruled unconstitutional. So I think that invoking him in this bill is a great admonition to everybody here to, as they go through the process of deciding where they are to vote no because it's unconstitutional. You know, members, a quick aside. You know, often we have heard from your side of the aisle that you're doing this to promote our democracy. And I just want to correct something. We don't have a democracy. And in the inimitable words of Benjamin Franklin, we have a republic if we can keep it. And there are times that I wonder when I read things like this bill whether our republic is going to be kept in good order. So I would encourage you all, and I know that I know you know the difference. I know you know that we are a republic by virtue of the fact that you represent roughly 42,000 people and that they send you here to be their voice. So you know full well that we don't have a democracy. So I would encourage you to think about that as you do your speeches moving forward. But I will say that I'm disappointed in the tone, tenor, and outcome of a lot of the conversation that we've had this evening. A lot of the amendments were honestly offered in good faith to put up guardrails. And I had mentioned one a little bit earlier to put up a proactive guardrail when we were talking rather animatedly about whether or not you would pre-register 16 and 17-year-olds that had a felony. We were honestly trying to provide some feedback, and I know that, and Representative Greenman and I have a good relationship. You know, we'll joke in the back, and we have good times, and you know, we talk about the wolves of Fort Snelling and how much she enjoyed my amendment a couple of years ago, and we have a good cordial relationship. We were trying to offer you sound advice, and it's frustrating when we do that and we have these. Well, we tried to have a measured conversation, but that went a little sideways. But when we have these conversations and we wind up effectively fighting on the floor, and from my perspective, that's a part of it, but we were trying to be offering constructive criticism to you, and that didn't happen. And you know, this is the first time I've not been on the Elections Committee, and I'm disappointed by that, but it's just the way the committee structure shook out, because I do enjoy the Elections Committee, and I'm kind of an elections nerd. And I think back to some of the different campaigns that I have worked on, and I think about how would they have looked at this bill. And I think I've shared this story before, that when I was a kid in, I think, 5th grade, my 3rd grade teacher's husband came and recruited me to become their campaign lit distributor. And his name is Dan Schaefer. He used to be a state representative, and then he became a congressman, and he introduced me to a person named Jack Swigert. If any of you remember the movie Apollo 13, Jack Swigert was the replacement pilot for Apollo 13, and he ran for Congress, and sadly he died of bone cancer before he was inaugurated or sworn in. And I think of those two and the hard work that they put into the election process. And I remember just being in awe of those people, and I got to meet President Reagan, and it was just something that, to me, was a cherished thing. And I asked myself, what would they think of this bill? And I don't have any Ronald Reagan quips for you. I can look a couple up, but I'm not going to. But I just think that this bill that you brought forward would be grossly disappointing, knowing full well that you're tilting at a windmill, knowing that it's not constitutional. It's an unconstitutional bill, as has been previously established by Representative Winkler and Representative Greenman. I talked to you in committee, and it says to me that you're kind of waiting for the ensuing law challenge to be in court. And I think afterwards, even in, I think it was the Reformer said that it will actually likely, yes, be challenged in court. So even I won't call it a magazine, but even an article was written along the lines of, yeah, it's going to be challenged. So even they are recognizing that this is going to be challenged legally. Having been the mayor in Waconia, I was always excited to see how our elections administrators would do the work that they did. And Waconia always had, I think, one of the highest voter turnouts in the state. And that was something to be proud of. And as I had said earlier, the attempt to automatically enroll people for voting, I still don't understand it. Because as I had said earlier, I love voting. For me, Elections Day is almost a religious holiday. That's how seriously I take the role of voting. And it's weird, and you all know this, when you see your name on a yard sign as you're driving, like, holy crap, that's me. And it takes on more meaning when you go and you vote for yourself and you're asking other people to vote for you. And I think that is a serious thing, and I think that this bill is not necessarily a serious effort, because I've never found the process of registering to vote to be onerous. Never. It takes minutes, and it's not something that I need done automatically for me. I'll do that. And I don't find it to be inconvenient or difficult or pick an adjective. It's not hard to do. And I'm disappointed. And I will say this also. I will hearken back again to then Speaker Tip O'Neill and President Reagan, how they would have weekly meetings where they disagreed vehemently. They fought like cats and dogs, but they would get together and they'd have a beer and they would try to work towards bipartisanship. This is not a bipartisan bill. It's not. And I know from seeing the elections bill, it also is not a bipartisan bill. And even former Governor Mark Dayton and the current governor in his first term said that elections bills should be bipartisan. This is not it. This is not it. That's really, really disappointing. So members, we've had a reasonably full-throated conversation. This is not a great bill. I wish that it was something that we could be proud of, and so many of you said, oh, I'm so proud to support this bill, and know full well that none of us do over here. So as we get close to voting, I'm voting no. I would encourage you to vote no, and I hope that we could possibly achieve a bipartisan effort, that we don't walk in the door knowing that it's going to have a constitutional challenge as we drop the bill. I mean, that's just a preposterous notion to author a bill that you know is going to have a constitutional challenge. That's not wisdom. So members, I encourage you to vote no. I'll be voting no, and I'm pretty sure everybody over here is going to be voting no. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Brown, Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, been a long debate this evening on a very important bill, but not a bill that is really well supported. You've heard the term bipartisan mentioned many times today. And why should these bills be bipartisan? It's tradition of decades of 3 governors from 3 different parties that all demanded that election bills come to their desk with bipartisan support. Why bipartisan elections bills? Because, frankly, we have a bipartisan electorate. And we want them all to have confidence that our election system is fair and that their vote carries as much weight as any other vote that's cast in the same election. Changes to election laws should be difficult. They should be challenging because election laws should not change quickly. It just confuses the voters. I just learned today that Governor Walz, who as recently as 2019 stated publicly that he too expected election bills to come to his desk with bipartisan support. But now he's taken an angle where he's blaming election deniers and far-right protesters to give him a reason not to demand bipartisan support. That's not what happens in Minnesota. Minnesota's not that kind of state. We've heard scare tactics from the other side, telling stories about activities in other states around this country. That's not Minnesota. Minnesota conducts free and fair elections. We're proud of our election system. It may not be absolutely perfect, but it's done very, very well. We've had great turnout throughout the years, often the best turnout in the country. That's something we should all be proud of. That demonstrates that voters have had confidence in our system. In this bill, we have an important section of the bill that's actually written by a group that's supported by foreign investors. This just doesn't seem possible. We're daring interested parties to take this to court. There are at least 3 provisions in this bill that will most likely end up in court. And let the judges decide our election law. That doesn't seem very Minnesotan either. We want to increase the level of confidence that the public has in our election system. We want citizens of all political stripes to believe that our system is fair and well run. This bill does nothing to build that confidence. Please vote red, members.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Hennepin, Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is an important moment for this bill. It's a moment for a bill that strengthens and protects the freedom to vote, that says it should be people, not foreign influence corporations, not outside actors, whose voices we're strengthening. For a bill that says we believe in the power of the people of all races, of all backgrounds, of all generations, and of all zip codes. And it's a bill that comes in the moment in our history where we see 2 very different visions for the future of American self-governance. This vote, this bill, really matters, not just here in Minnesota, but across the country. People across the country are looking at what states are doing right now. They're looking to see the choices we in state legislatures make. What are they seeing? They're seeing state legislatures that have gerrymandered districts into making voters elections voter-proof. They're seeing voter restrictions that are rolling back decades-old laws on the books. And in Tennessee, they're seeing their elected representatives expelled from the body for talking, for speaking what their constituents on policy matters they wanted to hear. But not here in Minnesota. Here in Minnesota, we had hours of debate. We're probably on hour 6 of this bill, of our visions, quite different visions of the values that we share. Here in Minnesota, we're talking about it. We're debating, we're bringing our constituents into this process. And we have a choice to make. We have a choice to make. Do we strengthen multiracial democracy or do we restrict it? And I have heard a lot, both in committee, and I just heard Representative Nash say that we are not a democracy, we are a republic. And I just want to address this because we talked about it a lot. So we are a democratic republic. And I think you quoted a founder. I'm going to quote Chief Justice John Marshall, who said, "The supporters of the Constitution are firm friends of liberty and the rights of mankind. We idolize democracy. We admire it, the Constitution, because we think it provides for a well-regulated democracy. It is true we are not a direct democracy. It is also true that the term democracy includes representative democracy." Here's why that matters. It matters because when we say we are democracy, what we mean, what my caucus means, what I think Minnesotans mean, is that we should have laws that are for maximum participation and input of the people in this state. It means that we should ensure that everyone has a voice and that we should be expanding and strengthening their ability to participate. So when we say that we have a choice to make about democracy, we're talking not about us, but we're talking about the people of this state. We're talking about whether we have government by the people or government by something else, government by corporation, government by rule. And our debate today reflects the choices we have to make. The Democracy for the People Act will give voters the right to know who is spending or speaking in our elections. And we heard a lot about the marketplace of ideas, more than once. And what I learned in my first-year economics class in college is the most important thing in a market is information. And what we're saying with this express advocacy provision is that voters should be able to know who's spending money in our elections. And what I heard from the other side is no thank you. We're going to shut off that. We don't believe that voters should have that information because we are worried that that might restrict dark organizations that currently are spending and not disclosing. And this is my opportunity to revise what I said earlier, because I think I said that Scalia was my least favorite Supreme Court justice, but I don't think that's true. But another thing he said was the premise of the First Amendment is that American people are neither sheeps nor fools, and hence fully capable of considering both the substance of the speech presented to them and the proximate and ultimate source. That's what we're trying to do. And what I thought was interesting was from the debate today, I heard reference to, I saw this handout with all this information here. That's what we're trying to do. Make sure voters know what people are spending and that folks have to disclose it. You can make choices. Everybody in this body can make choices about the names they see on this list and how much money, and we can talk about it. But if that money is not disclosed, we can't even have a conversation. And voters certainly won't know who is trying to influence their vote. And from the debate today, you'd think that my GOP colleagues across the aisle actually would support the foreign influence corporation ban. They actually wanted to expand it. But in the same breath, I heard it's too hard for foreign influence corporations to comply. This will limit the speech of foreign influence corporations, and a whole list of things thrown about constitutionality. And I want to talk a little bit about the prohibition on voter intimidation and deceptive practices. Because I have been a voting rights lawyer for more than a decade. And in Minnesota, the work around intimidation and deceptive practices is actually relatively new for me. We've seen it in a lot of places. When I was in Georgia, when I was in Arizona, when I was doing work in Florida. But here, we actually need it because of the rising threats and intimidation we are seeing. We heard about it related to elections officials, and we're going to hear a bill about election worker protection. Because in the last 3 years, the amount of disinformation, the big lie that our election was stolen, and that big lie needing a villain, which oftentimes is election workers, that has created a new dynamic. It has raised the stakes, and it is our job to make sure that voters can go into that voting place, that they can register to vote without fear of intimidation, harassment, with nobody hindering their vote. That's our job. We are going to protect the people, our voters, our constituents, our communities across Minnesota to ensure that their voices they can exercise their right to vote and their voices. And I also want to talk a little bit about just briefly, about the sort of litigation constitutional challenges. I heard reference to a news article, which was basically reporting that a right-wing group who sues everybody is going to sue us on this. We're going to be sued on the express advocacy provision that's been in place at the federal level since 2002. I know that that's a talking point, but what I think is important, and what I want to say is, as somebody who's been working on this bill for 3 years, and so it was news to me that a foreign corporation wrote all this bill. I wish I could have hundreds of my hours, thousands of my hours back, but we have worked really closely. I have spent lots of time asking questions to make sure that we have a bill that is not just constitutional, but it is on solid foundation. And the last thing I want to say about this debate is we hear a lot about us, about bipartisanship. We need Democrat and Republican votes in this context. And what I want to say, going back to what democracy is about, is this is not about us. This is about the voters of Minnesota. And our litmus test should be, how do these policies impact Democrat, Republican, Independent, voters with no party at all? That's our job in this body. I wish my colleagues across the aisle would fight as hard to ensure that every Minnesotan had a voice and a vote as they have tonight to defend the voices of powerful corporations in our elections. I will say this, we have a choice to make, and it's been super clear. People from across the state and around the country are looking at us and seeing what we're going to do today. Today, in the North Star State, in Minnesota, we choose democracy. We choose to be a North Star by choosing Minnesota voters of all backgrounds, of all zip codes, of all generations, by choosing multiracial, multi-generational, gender-inclusive democracy with Minnesotans at the center, by leading with our long tradition of being on the forefront of expanding access and saying we are not done until every person has a voice, until every voter has access, until we are at full participation. The power of American democracy is that we together have the power to improve and strengthen it. We, as lawmakers from diverse backgrounds, working together to strengthen the freedom to vote and the center of the voices of voters. We, as communities, working across racial, regional, generational differences to come together to make decisions, to solve problems, and to dream big together about what we can do together. We, as Minnesotans, working to build a robust, participatory democracy where everyone has a voice. The Democracy for the People Act chooses we the people. It chooses multiracial democracy. It chooses democracy, a Minnesota with Minnesotans at the core. And I'd ask you to join me in choosing democracy today and vote yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Stearns, the Minority Leader, Representative Damath.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With what we have heard this evening as we tried to offer amendments that could have made this bill bipartisan, and they were all rejected. This is not a bipartisan bill. An elections bill should be bipartisan. It is not. What we just heard from the bill author, as impassioned as that was, it was incorrect. We were absolutely misunderstood in what our effort was this evening. It actually feels similar to what a definition of gaslighting was and is. It is not that, but it felt very, very close to it. Members, vote no.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to just start by thanking Representative Greenman for her tireless and incredible work on behalf of our democracy and on behalf of House File 3 in putting this bill together over many years. Members, Minnesotans are proud of our democracy. They trust our voting system, and our system is exceptional. We have some of the highest turnout in the country, year after year, election after election. But our system can always be made better. Every single election cycle in the fall, the high school in my district invites me to come to a nonpartisan voter registration event. Representative Hornstein and I often do it together. And we have a moment in the assembly where those who are 18 are asked to raise their hands, and about a quarter of the audience does. And that's because those are the only folks in the room who we're actually talking to who can take a relevant action that day and register to vote. But imagine if we said, if you're 16 and 17, raise your hands. Almost the entire room's hands would go up. People could register there. They wouldn't actually get on the voter rolls until they turned 18, but they would have the opportunity to know that they could be a part of our democratic system. And guess what? In states where they've done this, they found that those voters who pre-register are more likely to vote. And we know that people who vote when they turn 18 are more likely to become regular voters. This is good for our democracy. When I was first running for office, too, I had some folks talk to me in my district because they were confused about absentee voting. They said, hey, I signed up last election to be an absentee voter, and I didn't get a ballot this time. And I said, well, that's because we don't actually have an absentee voter system that makes it ongoing for you. You have to do it every single election. So we don't have a permanent absentee voter system, but it was so confusing for these voters because they checked a box and said, I want to be an absentee voter. So I wrote a bill that session, my first year, that would make it so that you could just, once you check the box, you would be a permanent absentee voter. You could opt out in the future if you wanted, but you would get a ballot mailed to you. That's how most other states do it. When you check a box and say you want to be an absentee voter, that's what voters expect when they are checking that box, and that's in this bill. That's common sense. That makes sure that voters have access to the ballot. This bill takes care of deceptive practices and voter intimidation. It closes dark money loopholes. It prevents foreign influence corporations from having a say in our elections. And it includes automatic voter registration, which makes it so much easier for people to get on our voter rolls. These are popular. Early vote is popular. It's one of the most popular forms of voting. Putting power back in the hands of people and away from dark money is popular. Helping people have easier access to register to vote is popular. These are good government provisions. These are provisions that have been demanded for many years by our election officials, by the public, by good government groups coming to us year after year. These are provisions that have passed in blue states and red states. These are not partisan. The only place that these discussions seem to be partisan is in this chamber. We know that there are people who this bill is going to help. This bill is for Teresa, a Minnesotan with a disability who testified on both the importance of accessible polling locations, but also how much automatic voter registration would have helped her navigate the registration process, especially when she was having trouble coming out of homelessness. This bill is for Charlie, a 17-year-old election judge who testified about how excited he was to pre-register to vote and bring his friends along with him to engage more people in our democracy. This bill is for Kadar, who has watched eligible Somali elders struggle to register to vote because they do not speak English, which often results in frustration and aversion to participation. These are common sense provisions. These are things that will make our democracy more accessible, safer, and more trusted. Every member in this chamber should be voting green tonight, and I know I will be. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The clerk will take the roll on House File 3. All right, Kathy, we can have this back. Thank you.
One, two, three, four, five, six, seven.
And we get them in the bill. Bill's passed as amended. Yep, we did.
Ready?
Would the clerk please call the name of the member who's voting remotely?
Hassan.
Hassan votes aye.
Hassan votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 70 ayes and 57 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to. Without objection, we will revert to messages from the Senate.
Long moves that Rule 1.15, Paragraph C, relating to disposition of Senate files, be suspended for the purpose of taking the message from the Senate relating to House File Number 1278.
I recognize the maker of the motion, the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long, to explain the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this is the disaster assistance contingency account money that we have already passed off the House floor. The Senate made minor technical amendments, and so we need to concur to make sure that we're able to get this done.
Further discussion to the motion to suspend the rules. I recognize the member from Stearns, the Minority Leader, Representative Demuth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, this is a good motion. Please vote yes to suspend the rules.
All those in favor of the motion to suspend the rules, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails.
Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following House file herewith returned as amended by the Senate, in which amendments the concurrence of the House is respectfully requested. House File Number 1278, an act relating to public safety, appropriating money for disaster assistance contingency account. The message is signed Thomas S. Bodden, Secretary of the Senate. Pelowski moves that the House concur in the Senate amendments to House File Number 1278 and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Senate.
I recognize the author of the motion, the member from Winona, Representative Pelowski, to explain the Senate amendments.
And members, the Senate, in its infinite wisdom, deleted the word appropriating and inserted the word transferring. They basically mean the same thing. So I ask you to concur.
Is there any discussion to the Senate amendments? I recognize the member from Stearns, the Minority Leader, Representative Demuth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I would encourage a green vote on this as we've had to make the adjustments. I thank Chair Pelowski for being accommodating with the Senate. We do need to vote green on this.
All those in favor of the motion to concur with the Senate amendments, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. The motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by the Senate.
Third reading, House File Number 1278, as amended by the Senate.
Third reading is amended by the Senate. Any further discussion? I recognize the member from Monona, Representative Pelowski.
Mr. Speaker and members, despite the humor on the House floor, this is going to refill the disaster contingency account. It's down to less than $700,000. We have reports now across the state of flooding. So we need to get this bill to the governor. If the flooding continues to occur, this $40 million is going to come in very useful in a number of our districts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members.
Further discussion. I recognize the member from Clay, Representative Joy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this is a good bill. Of course, I live up by the Red River, so we're currently getting pictures from the sheriff's office and things are starting to flood, so this is a good bill, filling it back up, so thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll. Will the clerk please call the name of the member who's voting remotely?
Hassan.
Hassan votes aye.
Hassan votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 127 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is repassed as amended by the Senate and its title agreed to. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate, Madam Speaker. I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following Senate file herewith transmitted. Senate file number 1955. The message is signed Thomas S. Bodern, Secretary of the Senate.
First reading of Senate bills.
First reading of Senate file number 1955, an act relating to state government, establishing a budget for the Department of Agriculture. The bill is being re-referred to the Committee on Ways and Means.
Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk, and they're available online. If there is no objection, we will take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail. Announcements. I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Mr. Speaker, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 11:30 a.m., Monday, April 17th, 2023.
Representative Long moves when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 11:30 a.m., Monday, April 17th, 2023. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. Representative Long.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Long moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails and the House stands adjourned until 11:30 a.m., Monday, April 17th, 2023.